un podcast itinerante sul design che racconta di intuizioni e idee virtuose in grado di migliorare le cose. A bordo di un campervan ospitiamo designer e menti fuori dal comune che progettano modi e mondi più equi. Io sono Matilde e questo è DesignXCommons, il podcast di YED che attraversa la complessità del nostro tempo per imparare a navigarla con parole semplici. Today we are here with Didem Gurdur Broo and Marco Dare, so welcome and thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
We are gonna start our conversation talking and thinking about how can system thinking can help and contribute to the creation of a more equitable and inclusive world, starting from your own experiences and practice.
Mm-hmm.
So to start immediately, we would like to ask you to tell us a bit about who you are and what you do.
So thank you very much. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. Who I am, I mean, it's a big question. I am firstly a computer engineer. I define myself that way. I am currently an assistant professor at Uppsala University, and I led a lab called Cyber Physical Systems Lab.
Yeah.
I did my PhD in mechatronics, and then I was doing postdoc in different places before going back to Sweden, where I had my PhD.
Yeah.
I always tell that I am a person who cares about this world. What drives me is that I care about the nature, the well-being of different species that lives in this world, and that's the drive that shapes all of the research and teaching and all the activities that I do around that.
It's kind of a common thread.
That's what, exactly, grounds me.
Yeah. And you, Marco?
Well, thank you so much. For me, it's an honor to to be here. So I'm a designer.
Mm-hmm.
I am currently also working in academia at Imperial College London.
Yeah.
What I'm working right now is on design of technology for well-being.
Yeah.
So how to deploy this technology ethically as well, or to think about the unintended consequences on people's well-being, on their psychological well-being.
Yeah.
But previously, I wanted to be a film director because my path towards design started from YouTube when I was 10 years old, when I was making parodies on about Italian songs, like in a chipmunk version.
Good start.
Yeah, everything is online.
Available. Okay.
And then I slowly moved towards documentaries, and I realized how interesting it was for me to talk to people. Getting their perspective and discovering perspective that I've never thought about was really fascinating. And the switch happened when I made a documentary on an asylum in my hometown, in Treviso.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, from wanting to become a physicist, I decided to switch and learning communication and communication design. So that's what I studied.
Okay.
And then I worked in Italy, and then I moved in the UK to study even more. And now I'm there.
And you already gave us a glimpse about ethical approaches and the care you mentioned, Didem. And I'm curious about when and how did you start experiencing like care and ethical approaches in your life at large? Sometimes there are even random experiences that are like shaping us or guiding us towards what we are then doing these days.
It's a great question, actually. I think so many things in life shapes you to become who you are at any moment, and it probably never stops, right? I think what shaped me most in the last 10 years is that, so I born in a country called Cyprus. It's a tiny island who is still divided to two. Living in that context, seeing that all the challenges and difficulties around being a kid in that little land, and maybe because it is island also, the idea of that you are limited, it is small, the community, everything, it makes you who you are and it stays with you.
Yeah.
But at some point I moved away from Cyprus, and it was a deliberate, very well thought decision that I said that, okay, I am going to leave this place. I love this place, but I don't belong here.
Yeah. And your destination at that time was?
Sweden.
Mm-hmm.
So I moved to Sweden to do a PhD, and it is completely different country with different society, different dynamics, different ways of living, thinking, and so on. And I think that big change of everything around me and being in a new place and trying to find ways to belong shaped me a lot. And it was very funny that I felt that I belong to that country very fast. So I think the care concept of taking care of things became for me important at that time of my life, that I see a society that I wanted to be part of and I wanted to contribute. Yeah. And many things about the values of that society shaped me, which I wanted to care more and more about, not only the applications that I work, like robots, but beyond that. And the ethical standing and implications of the applications of the things that I work.
But we know you have also many passions, right? How do you keep them all together in your everyday life, and do they contribute to one another, or even in your own practice as a scientist?
I cannot imagine myself without sea. Diving, doing snorkeling, taking the photo of the little tiny creatures underwater. It just fills me with happiness and care, and sometimes with positive and sometimes very negative feelings that you want to protect it. But how can I help to protect it? It means a lot to me. How can I do that? And sometimes it is about you struggle, like my tango experience. I
wasn't easy at the beginning.
Certainly not. I was not built to dance.
Built to dance.
Not designed to dance.
And then you feel yourself outside of your comfort zone. And there are very typical reactions that you do when you are outside of your comfort zone. Like you just don't want to be there.
Yeah.
Want to get out of that room. Easy. But then there is no growth about that. And then you put yourself together and you say that, okay, what can I learn from this?
Yeah.
And then you grow. And it's incredible to connect with your body and to know how to move and how to communicate your movements to other person without talking, with only moving around. And it is dancing tango. But actually it is so powerful when you are leading a research lab.
Yeah.
Because you need to work with people, and so many times you will be in uncomfortable situations. You want to leave that room. But instead you stay there with that uncomfortness and you try to, okay, this is not the best feeling, but what can I do with this? How can I grow? And you get all these experiences and tool sets that helps you to grow and be a role model, so other people see that, this is a way to live, and they can also perhaps adapt it.
You spoke about getting out of your comfort zone, probably without even knowing why you're doing it, or what's the goal at the end of this big push you're giving yourself, but somehow probably trusting the process. Is it something fundamental in a research project or research environment that you both experience in different ways? So is it, in your opinion, this idea of not getting obsessed with the goal but trusting the process of research, the main part of researching in the end?
I've been in Peru in the last month. I have been working in the last year and a half on dementia in Peru. Yeah. So dementia is that mix of, let's call them illnesses, such as Alzheimer, or also Parkinson, diabetes can also contribute to a status of people living with dementia. And mainly dementia brings you to forget things, to not to be able to make decisions, to lose yourself, and not to not be able to recognize places where you have been living your entire life. Yeah. It's an urgent issue, especially in places where there are no hospitals, where there are no doctors. And so with a group of researchers between universities in the UK, as well as in Peru, we are working towards improving life of people with dementia. And my role specifically is on leading the design of a screening tool for dementia. Okay. So usually to diagnose dementia, you need to go through cognitive tests. It's quite expensive. It needs to be run by doctors. But in Peru, you do not have these resources. A lot of people speak indigenous languages. So how can you make it accessible and inclusive? And that's what we have been working on, not just by myself, but with other people.
Yeah.
And on finding a way to make it more accessible. Yeah. So now we came up with kind of an app where people need to draw something, or they need to touch certain parts of their body, to walk around, to voice record, and then this recording is analyzed through machine learning, and then in 15-20 minutes you get a good a result that it could be a starting point. And then diagnosis is important, because then of course it's not an easy thing to say to someone that you have been diagnosed with such as a condition, but it's a starting point for the family to know how to behave, how to start living with it, because that's really important to knowing how to live with it, especially with such as things that we do not have a care right now. We can't really stop it. There's tons of research that is trying to do so, but it's also expensive, and in those situations you can't, but trying to find a way to co-live with it. And that's why we say people living with dementia, not like other ways of saying. And answering to your part of the process is that also when we started everything, we didn't know what we were ending up with. We knew that we had a purpose. It was, okay, we need to improve life people with dementia, but you do not know really what's the object. What are you going to design? We do not know. I mean, designers, I think, should get comfortable, such as researchers. It's the meaning of the word itself is I'm researching, I'm exploring. I do not know what I'm going to end up with because it's unknown. What we know and what we could potentially shape on the way is the process. So getting comfortable with an unknown or the uncertainty should be part of our design processes. If I'm designing furniture for the house, or I'm designing like a screening tool for dementia, or a robot or anything, we do not necessarily need to know the final object, but the process will tell us what to get to. And of course, there are methods. What we study at Imperial is which are the best methods for certain situations. And then of course they're all shaped by the context. So everything is context sensitive, but we can design processes to get to something.
So in a project like the one that you are involved in Peru, you talked about this collaboration with many different figures to make it happen. So there's this trait of multidisciplinarity involved. What was the designer role within this team of practitioners?
So the team that I'm in is an incredible team of incredible researchers, and they are a mix of neurologists, epidemiologists, sociologists, anthropologists, also community health workers. So what we are doing, like what is essential to do in this situation, especially when there are people from the UK or from privileged places in Peru, and when you are designing for rural communities, because this tool that we are designing is for communities that do not have medical resources, is to involve these communities. The most important thing is that part of the team needs to be also the community themselves. And because you want the research objectives, so your design goals, how do you want to call them, to be aligned. You don't want to design something that they do not want to. Like you need to listen, and you need to be in a listening mode to be able to absorb that perspective. So I would consider part of the team also let's call them people on the field, so people on the ground that are community workers, that are the family themselves. So, and then, there are researchers in various locations in the world, in Australia and the UK. So the role of design in this sense, I think the first one is to design the process, because sometimes, I need to design a screening tool. But how do you do that? Usually a lot of teams, they just go and try. And it's mainly also the role of designers at what I was to push to involve the community from the start. So let's involve the people on the field that are living with dementia from the beginning. So why? Because then at that point you can get the needs of these people way earlier, and you can shape the design in the way that you create something useful. You do not create rubbish. There is a term called design tourism that some friends of mine, design tourism or design littering. So it means that you are designing something that is just trash, that you think that is correct, but then you go in the community and then
based on your assumption.
It's based on an assumption. So the role of design is to try, we need to involve all the points of view. So it's this kind of glue and holistic perspective. Another role is to bring the researchers together as well. So kind of a project manager situation where you try to bring up all the doubts that sometimes researchers just keep from themselves. But you bring up the issue and you try to solve and iterate on that. And then finally, I think the role of design is also the craft. around the tool, because design at the end is something physical or digital or something that people will deal with. So it could be an object, could be anything.
Yeah.
And so the designer's role and our team role is to craft this, to craft the interaction, to craft the buttons, to craft, okay, how big the text side should be, or which color should we use, or which features do we want the system to have. So in these situations where design teams are small, of course, there is like a kind of a startup vibe where you try to be both in this warm eye view on the details of the pixels, but also from a bird eye view where you try to design the system itself. And of course, thinking about the interaction means not just the interaction of the app, but also who is going to use it and when in the moment of the day, and what's the system of use of this tool from the start to when you need to start to screening these people, and after 1 year when we'll finish to screen these 32,000 older adults. That is the goal for the next year.
So it's definitely system thinking. I would say designing a process involves a lot of system thinking for going through all the different phases that you told us, and from very kind of conceptual points, like bringing up the doubts, to the configurations of the deliveries. And it was very interesting when you started speaking about the role of language and how much language can be a limit because of literacy level of people, of communities, and so that you had to reconfigure tools. And so going to drawings or movements. And I would like to switch this question to Didem and see, for instance, what do you mean with a robot? And what was, in your experience, the reactions to definitions or notions of robots?
Today we call robots, actually, I mean, even the chatbots are robots. Anything that can has some autonomy, run with some software. But the robots that I work has the physical existence also. So they are physical systems.
Software and hardware.
Runs exactly cyber parts, which is the software. Yeah. And they are existing in this world actually since ancient times. And the clocks itself are incredibly intelligent, actually, machinery, which has been used not only showing time, but in all times with some instrumentations around it, some machinery which even served wines or served water. And this idea of that we generally saw robots as servants started at times. The robots that I worked are, I call them intelligent machines. They are machines that have intelligence. But today they are more than intelligent. They are connected. This is very new for our engineering discipline. We had machines like cars, but they were not connected. They were mechanical machines that we used, cars from 80s, even 90s. Then we had some electronics which made them more intelligent. Now we are talking about how we can have self-driving autonomous cars which communicate with each other and then share information with each other and make decisions according to the information that share with each other. And one of the critiques that I bring up quite often with my research and writings is that how the engineering field developed and how the machines are developed have this misalignment when it comes to the speed. We still teach engineers to solve problems. But our machines are incredibly intelligent, need to be connected with each other, and they can act autonomously. So there is this mismatch that needs to be addressed. And before you were talking about multidisciplinarity, which became quite a part of our lives, to be honest. We have engineers and computer scientists and designers working in the same team to build these new intelligent machines. Is it enough? I don't think so. I think that we need more than that. We need to have new line of education and also research that will contribute to this existing structure. Yes, we should have multidisciplinary teams working on specific projects to address specific problems. We call it research. That's what we do in academia, and I love, and I want to share this. One of my favorite quotes is from Einstein, and he says that if we knew what we are doing, we wouldn't call it research.
Yeah, true.
You know, and the beauty of
It's always valid.
it's valid, but also so honest, and that's Einstein also, to be so honest about the reality. Sometimes we think that every research project should have valid, positive, actionable results.
Yeah.
But actually, the reality is that they shouldn't. We should explore things.
It's a trial and error.
That part of it is very important. And then when it comes to the language and multidisciplinarity and so on, it's not always possible to have people coming from different disciplines in one room and communicate. We even use sometimes same terminology, same keyword, but mean different things. And it is not part of our education, it's not part of how we do meetings, it's not how we design products, especially the products that I'm talking about are like complex engineering projects.
Yeah.
So you need to have mechanical engineer, computer scientists, electronics background people. You need to have designers.
Yeah.
You need to have today AI engineers. You need to have ethics people, lawyers. And these are all like 7 teams. You need at least 10 teams. Each team has 2 people. You are 20 people who are deciding how we should design an autonomous vehicle. And this doesn't happen because we start with, I already have a car. How can I make it an autonomous car? So forget about the whole design process from the scratch also.
Yeah.
There is so many mismatching parts of how we are developing these new systems.
Yeah. Well, it's a bit paradoxical that working with existing, which I think it's a good thing because it gives you a sense of awareness and consciousness about what's the surrounding and not thinking constantly from scratch, you know, because that's also not valuing what has been achieved so far. But I say it's paradoxical because I don't think that working with existing could not imply re-questioning, you know, or posing the very first initial questions of, okay, I want to get my car autonomous, but what is a car and what is it for?
Why should I move around?
Or how to move even without like mentioning the car in itself.
Exactly.
But then I wonder if among these big teams, like in the experience of Marco leading the project in Peru, he said it was a bit, the designer was this figure kind of connecting the dots and bringing questions from one side to the other. In these teams that you described as, how is this communication flow going? And because sometimes we are not really using the same language, or we mean different things by using same words. That's why I ask you, what do you mean with robots? Because probably the 3 of us could have 3 different definitions, right? And so how do you bring a common glossary in a situation of a research led and managed with so many people?
Honestly, what I think is that every big company who are building these systems are finding their own mechanism to deal with that. So if you look at an automotive company, for instance, so most of them has been here for a very long time. Already have incredible processes about how they build systems, and they have their own language. They share lots of information. They build their knowledge, and then want everyone who are employed by that company to be able to reach that knowledge and stay there for a long time. So this kind of approaches that individual institutions and companies are trying to implement is very beneficial. But I think that we need to have this more transdisciplinary way of educating our younger generation also, in addition to what we are doing, which will be the key people who will ask difficult questions and be able to communicate with others.
So start earlier sharing this.
Exactly. And I mean, if we go back to the question related with the car example, we are building autonomous cars, but actually where we start is self-driving cars. So these are two different things, right? Autonomous means that they act autonomously. Self-driving means that it drives itself. While very close, actually they are also very difficult concepts. And the question of asking, what do I expect from my traveling experience is much bigger than how can I replace the driver in the car with intelligence. These are two different things. Because with the self-driving car, you already made the assumption that I need a car. But maybe I don't need the car. Or maybe I will need completely different thing. Maybe I need even bike. It's all about what is the question, like what is the problem there. And it is so challenging, especially if you are already very accomplished car manufacturer, right? Surely you want to start the question.
To put yourself in doubt.
You need the car.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You put all the investment, you build all this knowledge in your company, you have incredible supply chain. Like if this company doesn't exist, so many other things will not exist also. So the transformation, how it will end up where we want it to end up is very big question. And because of this very specialized fields of people working on only on their field, we cannot take a step up, have a wider, more generic view. To be able to ask the question, what do I expect from my travel experience? You need to know a lot. And we are not educating our young generations to be able to ask these difficult questions.
Yeah.
And it might not be having any answer also, this is another thing. Maybe we will ask the question, it will make it very uncomfortable for us. We will not get any answer. But even the act of pushing it, asking it, and giving people the space and profession and money and resources to be able to do this is what we need if we want to change this world.
Yeah. And if I can add, from a practical perspective, in design, they are now starting teaching how to ask questions. So there is the famous, there is one of the frameworks that is mostly used is the double diamond. That is this, comes from design thinking, and it's this process where you set your mindset into a divergent moment and then converging into something. So the design process of anything, you start with an exploration, and then at a certain point you choose, okay, now I've explored enough. Let me just get to something. And one of the first steps, like that end point after a convergence, is the question sometimes. So that's why some project starts even without knowing what the question is, and you use design to get to that question. And usually in design thinking is written as, how might we do something? And the problem is that you need to be able to design that question in the right way. A lot of the time you say, how might we design a new car? But this is not the right question. Why? Because we are already assuming that the car is the solution. So instead, if you say, how might we improve our own way of transportation, or how might we make it more sustainable? So we are at that point having a step back and trying to, as you were saying, questioning the car itself.
Just to add, if I may, and the great point about pointing out design thinking. I, as an engineer, never heard of design thinking until I was doing my PhD.
We stick design to anything, be aware.
And it was mind-blowing first time when I practiced design thinking. I was like, wow, this is so innovative. Because I was more like a systems engineer. I did my PhD in mechatronics. So I designed systems which are mechanical, electronical, and computer systems all together, like the autonomous cars, like the robots. And for me, systems thinking was the base. Surely, if you don't think systems way, you cannot build anything, any of these systems that I taught. And then I love the idea of design thinking. Now I can combine these two. I even wrote a research article during my PhD about how we blend systems thinking and design thinking, actually. So double diamond, for instance, with several tools of systems thinking, like iceberg models and so on. And I thought that, this will work. And even that didn't work. Because the third dimension about building systems today is about, one, why we want them, what is our values and morals that also grants you to make decisions around these systems. And for me, it was always about sustainability. I want the systems that we build to be able to be part of the ecosystem instead of going against it. And then systems thinking helps. But also another thing with sustainability is that so many of the solutions that we are building today has the risk of being the problem for the future. And this has been in front of us so many times. Historically, we know that it was a big revolutionary solution.
But now we are facing with the problem.
One other dimension to systems thinking, design thinking, is also like this, having the mindset of futures thinking. When we design, not only focus today and today's dynamics and today's users and experiences, but think about how the future might look like. And you will never know it. But if you practice it and have strategies around your products, your intelligent systems, in my case, that can at least give you possibility to develop and design more sustainable systems.
When talking about technology interaction, where is the trust? I mean, when we let something in the hands of users, let's say, just to simplify, is a trust a moment in the system thinking of a project, part of it, and how do you deal with this idea of letting people trusting whatever you've been developing hopefully with the mindset of building a better future scenario?
I would say is that if we involve people from the start, that moment of trying to create trust when you give something to them, there is not a moment where you give something to them because they have been co-creators. So the issue doesn't come up, to me, at least from my experience, especially if you from the start think about what's the impact of technology in their daily life. For example, in my lab, what we are doing is to integrate certain theories of psychology into design to solve this issue of people using the technology. And to do so, while you are doing the design process, you need to take care of these values of behavioral psychology, let's say. So the theory that we're using is the self-determination theory, that it's one of the most cited theories of psychology currently existing right now. This theory is telling us, okay, we need to be sure that we are fulfilling the basic psychological needs of the people that are going to use the tool. And these basic psychological needs are autonomy, so the need of feeling in control when I'm using the technology, so people can make choices and they can act according to their own real being and how they feel. The second is competence, so it's the need of feeling capable and to master some tasks and also to be able to learn why this, because if people feel that technology is empowering us to do something, they might also be more motivated to overcome certain issues. And the third thing to fulfill these basic psychological needs and to bring well-being is relatedness. So we need to be sure that this technology helps us to fulfill the need of connection and relation with others, to love, to be loved, to feel that you're loved, but also connection with the environment around me. So going back to your question, if we are able to fulfill these basic psychological needs and if we involve people from the start when we design, they will feel part of the creation of the tool. So they will use technology to fulfill their purpose. And the cool thing about thinking about well-being is that the higher is the level of well-being, the higher is the motivation of the person to overcome a certain issue. So for example, for me, for the community workers to go and think about screening older adults and working on dementia.
I think it really makes sense in the research you're leading in Peru as much as the autonomous driving car, because despite all the technological trust that you can have, there is something more, how to say, it's kind of a mysterious feeling, you know, which probably relates to a set of values, as we were saying before. But we all fear something, and I think that when it comes to technology and to the capability of artificial intelligence, for instance, and with all these different scenarios that we are told and the different narratives that are being built around, it's a big question. Black Mirror was a series, you know, talking about all these different possibilities for the good and for the bad, because we led researches for the good, aiming for that, but then maybe along the process we figure out there's no good at all.
And not always researchers, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, today most of the technology is coming from big tech companies, not from the university.
Exactly.
And this shift of who is driving the development is very big part of the trust to the technology. And it is also a very big part of lots of things that we do in my lab, for instance. I mean, we look at the drone-human interactions, and we try to understand how a person can trust that system. We look at human computer interactions, human-robot interactions in more detail, robot-robot interactions where the human is also in the room. What does that mean? And especially the human-machine interaction field has developed lots of research around this. How can we trust the system, or how can we build systems that the users can trust, where it starts, where it ends, how far we can push, and so on. But when it comes to other fields, it is not as easy to identify. For instance, when it comes to artificial intelligence, I mean, we are lucky that we are in Europe. I think that we are lucky because EU at least is trying to regulate AI. We have trustworthy AI guidelines that is put on action for the last 4 or 5 years now. Just a few months ago, AI Act has been approved by the European Parliament. That means that any system that we are building and giving our users in Europe needs to follow specific guidelines and regulations, which means that it needs to be, for instance, transparent. You shouldn't have the question that, is this AI that I am chatting with, or is this a real person? It should tell you.
Absolutely.
It needs to be transparent.
And it is also connected to autonomy of people knowing what's happening. So it needs
to, human oversight needs to be there. You should be able to, anytime, take the control of the autonomous system, and several more. You know, it needs to respect human well-being, human rights, and all these like very big concepts that in my lab we are like, okay, how can we implement this by considering this? That's why I'm working with lawyers. That's why I have engineering psychologists in the lab who is working as a postdoc. That's why we are going and talking with psychologists and philosophers and trying to understand how the technology can be really put in an action by considering all the regulations. But even having this idea, Europe and European Union has been criticized a lot, because while we are doing this, we are trying to take the control of this development by big technology companies. In other parts of the world, they are not. So there are no regulations about AI in the US, and the US is producing incredible amount of research and products. Same in Asia, we have different players that doesn't have this kind of regulations. it's even fine to collect someone's data without asking. But we have GDPR, we have privacy. So many people also criticize that if we put this much limitations and regulations, then Europe will not be able to compete with other players when it comes to that. And then there is this balance. So rightfully, we want to be competitive. But actually, at the same time, being competitive and making profit while hurting the citizens, even profit-wise, doesn't make sense, because then you will cause problems about the well-being of the environment and people. It will cost you money. Like a sensible way, it's in the long term, not something really beneficial, not economically.
I agree with you, but at the same time, what's the balance that you think will be right? So you said that you're glad to live in the EU, but I also think that at the same time, not having restriction might bring something that it would then never exist. And maybe we design horrible things and that are with a lot of unintended consequences, but at the same time, maybe we can find something that can really change the status quo of this technology. So what could be the balance?
Yes, I think that kind of experiment and exploration needs to be done by institutions like universities, like research institutions, with people who does research, who have the chance to fail, who is responsible to be ethical and moral, who are checked by all the research environment and practices. And if they fail, I'm not saying that researchers and academia is a perfect place either. We have so many wrongdoings also, but we catch them. We have the mechanisms. We know how to deal with it. We can take actions against it. How can you deal with a private, huge technological company who is more powerful than hundreds of countries in this world? Who is checking? Where is the mechanisms? They might invent something, yes, but for what price? It doesn't work. I know that there are many things that they manage to bring, which we are all benefiting, perfect. But also, when it comes to generative AI and arts, for instance, look at how many artists' time, money, resources, life has just disappeared in a second. Now you can say that, give me a video, the style of Marco. It goes and checks all of your information without your permission and gives me the video in your style.
There's this kind of the threshold between the fun, the experimentation, and when it becomes a problem. But I would like to break these rules. Sometimes they're needed, sometimes it's also good to break. And so to wrap up our beautiful conversation, I would like to ask you, what did you bring us? If you brought us something, and what is it and why?
So I brought you a book.
Oh, wow.
It's called The Lagom Life, a Swedish way of living. The book itself is a nice read, actually. But more than that, like I wanted to introduce you the idea of lagom.
Okay.
Lagom is a word in Swedish which doesn't have the perfect translation to English, but it's something like not too much, not too little. Just right. And it is one word. It's widely used. How much coffee do you want?
Lagom. Okay.
How much do you want to work? Lagom. And it is very big part of actually Swedish culture and society. And it taught me a lot to think that way, to not be too much, to not live by consuming too much, to not give your time too much, but not too little either. And finding that balance and thinking that way. And because today I mentioned a few times about sustainability, and I know that this program and the whole work that you will do will affect so many. I think it will be great to introduce the concept and have something from.
It's beautiful. Thanks a lot. we'll definitely dive into. It's really great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for inviting.
And you, Marco?
Yeah, so I have these. That it's what they call tablero.
Wow.
That it's what community workers use when they go on the field.
Okay.
So the community workers are these volunteers that they just decide to spend, and usually women in Peru, that they not I found a lot of men in the Amazon forest as well, but they are these people of the community that just want to spend half of their day or the entire day for the others.
Yeah.
So every community workers has 200, 300 people that they are taking care of. And in healthcare, 360. So it could be if someone is pregnant, if someone has a headache, if someone is injured, if someone dies, they are there for the community. And we co-designed with them this app for screening. So while we were designing the app that is digital, I found that they were using these, like they use paper, they put paper here usually, and they just take notes.
Yeah.
And they were using this as a table, as everything, or they were using to protect from the sun, or they were using it to take away dogs. And so I found that this was such a interesting object. And at that point, they were proposing, and in the co-design sessions where you need to leave freedom to them to ideate, they were coming up with this thing that we co-designed together to put the tablet into the tablero. So basically, they decided to integrate the technology into the tablero. Why? Because, for example, in Lima, that is quite dangerous.
Yeah.
They didn't want to go with the tablet like this because, of course, you are like a target. And so they wanted to integrate the tablero with the phone, and so we co-designed this, as well as we'd attached things to draw, because some exercises are draw based, and so they have the pen, and so people can draw and they can erase. Exactly. So they came up with this idea, and I thought it's so. And it doesn't mean that this is going to be implemented. Like when you co-design something, it doesn't mean that these ideas will be the real ones. But why co-design is so important? Because you understand a lot about what's their needs. So in this case, like protecting from the sun. So maybe we should think about the fact that it's really hot and they might need water while they work, or they might need a hat, or maybe, I don't know, they need to protect the tablet. So we might need to think about safety in Lima. That is different from the Amazon forest in the small town where we were, that safety wasn't really an issue. So I think this could be an object that represents, I don't know, it's just a little bit, a small piece from Peru, and I thought it was cute.
I can put the Didem book inside.
Maybe
Look,
well.
This is the match of the two.
Oh yeah, perfect.
With a bit of everything. No, it's like not too little, not too much.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that thanks for all these marvelous insights, and then also these two amazing gifts. It's plenty of ingredients and materials to set, hopefully a new mindset for design at large, and then design and all the other kind of different disciplines that will cross, hopefully, more and more in the upcoming years. And so thanks for the conversation.
No, thank you.
And hopefully we'll see each other again, maybe for another episode, step by step. It's a research somehow.
Yeah.
And we're going to move to then the next stop and episode.
I want to thank you. I feel really hopeful. You were saying that looking at young generation in Sweden you feel hopeful. Yeah. And I have the same feeling here to see this kind of new mindset growing around design. So thank you for this.
I completely agree. Thank you very much. And it was a pleasure
for me.
Meet all of you.
Same.
It was a big one. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Peanut! Questo è Design4Commons, il primo podcast di YED che amplia i confini del pensiero progettuale alla base delle nuove lauree magistrali.